Well, let's start talking about your book,
Okay.
because I know that not only writing of the book has made a huge difference in your life, but you've seen some pretty great results from using that book as that asset in your life.
Yeah, it's like, where do I start? Like, the benefits of a book are so vast, so wildly vast, and the nuances that come about. Okay.
Mm.
All right. So first, let's talk about social currency. Okay, no. Let's go back a little bit. Because I want to define what it means to be an author.
Okay. I'd love that.
Because there's a lot of people that are wannabes.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. So first of all, an author in this context, because you can be an author of many things, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's an author of the universe, if you will. But the author in this context, we're referring to a printed publication available for public consumption. Okay,
Yes.
a printed publication available for public consumption that provides credibility to the author.
Yes.
Okay, you wrote something and you as the author get credibility for it. So therefore, if you wrote something and actually discredits you, you may not want to brand yourself as an author. I mention this because there are many people who write pamphlets.
Yes.
And who do a half-assed job.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean about errors in the book. I'm talking about writing garbage.
Yes.
Right? Yes, most people won't read your book, but the ones that do matter.
Yeah.
Right? So that means you took the time to write a proper book. You had editing done to it. It has a framework. It has continuity, right? It follows some sort of storytelling methodology, something, so that it's actually a consumable thing.
Yeah, and it provides an extreme amount of value.
Yeah. So that's...
Like, I think some people are afraid of giving it all away in the book. And I tell my clients, give it all away in the book.
Well, and the thing is, you can't give it all away. It's impossible to, because you know too much.
Yes.
Right? And so I'm going to go back to the benefits, because you and I can talk about books and writing and all the fun stuff. So let's talk about some of the benefits of it. One is social currency and your brand itself.
Okay, so talk a little bit about social currency.
Okay, sure. Let's talk about social currency as a business consultant. Right? So one of the things I do in business, in addition to training, is I do management consulting. I help management teams solve problems around communications, workflow, whatever it is that they're facing, to help them get to the next level, right? Or help them accomplish a particular goal. And I was in a meeting with a large international bank. And when I say large bank, like, they have offices in 30 countries, right?
Okay.
And I'm on a call with their IT department heads, because we're on a strategy call about how to solve this particular problem. And on the call, people are badgering me, right? They're hounding me. They're like, why are you saying this? Because I'm a consultant. I'm an outsider. And I'm used to this. I'm used to, if you're a management consultant and you can't take some badgering, you really shouldn't be in the space. Okay. You're in someone's organization telling them how to do it better. Okay. Like, yeah, you kind of have to handle a little bit.
Yeah. You're stepping on their turf.
Yeah. But the problem is the meeting's going nowhere.
Yes.
We're running in circles because the people are just asking questions that have nothing to do with the project. They're just like asking random questions, etc. So my stakeholder who set up the meeting interrupts the meeting, because he's a senior manager, right? He's an executive in the organization. He interrupts the meeting and he says, do you know who you're talking to, gentlemen? Because it was all men in the meeting.
Okay.
He's like, this is Hasan. He wrote the book on SharePoint. And I'm sitting there like, because now all of a sudden the entire tone of the meeting changed and everything went way smoother, right? So he said, how could I have done that without a book? Like, I couldn't have paid the man enough money. I couldn't have, like, how else would you accomplish something like that?
Yeah.
Right. So that's one example of social currency. Another example of social currency is, say, like, my ability to get a meeting. right? So because of the work that I do, I work with large government organizations, large Fortune 100 companies, and people like that. I'm currently expanding to smaller, more innovative, more fun companies too, right? So that's kind of like my new thing. But with those types of organizations, say like getting a meeting with the president of a university,
Yes.
or a prime minister, right? How long would that take somebody?
A long time.
A long time.
If ever.
Yeah, if ever. Well, it turns out I can show up in a country and get a meeting in a couple of days.
That is
Because it's a
cool.
combination of the credibility, right? I've got a
Yes.
book that's actually on bookshelves in 10 different countries. Right? So with that kind of like international, and it's not that there's a lot of those copies. They're just on the right bookshelves.
Yes.
Right? They happen to be on the bookshelves of executives and managers, not on the average Joe. Right? So it's a very strategic play in the book itself. So that's another example of like just what that does. And another thing is just getting invited to speak. I mean, holy moly, that is such a big thing. Is being an author is very easy access to getting speaking engagements.
Yes.
And that's another huge thing. So I'd say those are a few of like the social currency type things that show up.
Well, and there's many stages you can't even get on unless you're an author.
Yeah. Unless you're like a huge accomplishment that you've already done, like you were president of a country or something like that. Yeah. Most of the bigger stages do require you to be a published author and have like a real book, like with a real presence and all that other fun stuff. So more benefits to being a book. I'm like, it helps when you're single. I don't know. It's being an author. Well, gosh, what else?
And I think too, it becomes, in a sense, your extended business card.
Yeah. Oftentimes I don't even carry business cards. I mean, it's just that. And maybe I should. Maybe I could do better at that. But But yeah, absolutely. Okay, you know what? Let me take that one step further. Let's talk about the cost of a customer's eyeballs, cost of exposure.
Nice. Okay.
So when you show up and you give someone a business card, you get one set of exposure. Okay. When that person goes home and pulls it out of their pocket or their purse or wherever, and they put it on the table, that's a second. And when they throw it in the trash, that's the third.
Yes.
And then on the rare occasion when they put it down, maybe they'll scan it in, right? And then they'll end up in the trash, and then you're done. Because you're in the CRM, you're gone, right? You're kind of out of that person's life. You no longer exist for them in present time. You're not in their awareness. When you give somebody a book, right, whether it be gifted or purchased, and you've autographed it, and you've written it out to them with a real personalized message like, hey, life is awesome. No, like a real message like, man, you're really great, and it was so nice to talk to you and your wife, and like a real personalized message. That person will put it up on their bookshelf, and it will never, ever, ever come down.
Yes.
They will move across the world, and they will pay for that book to move with them.
Yes.
They will be honored for the rest of their life that this author actually signed this book. Their friends will come over and it'll be at dinner parties and they'll be like, I met this awesome author, Kim, at this conference in Toronto and she was great and she signed this book. Look, isn't this amazing? And they will do this even if they have never read your book.
Yes.
There is nothing else you can do in marketing that will create more eyeball exposures at that price point or effort.
Yes.
There is simply nothing else that comes close.
No, and it's true. And, even let's say you didn't even sign the book. Let's just say you just gave it to them.
Yeah.
There is such a perception about the value of books that people do not throw them out.
No.
So even when let's just say they decide to get rid of your book, okay?
Right.
People, it's almost like a taboo that you do not throw out a book. Like that's
it's weird. Like we'll throw away thousands of dollars of furniture, electronics, clothes, but not books.
Not books, right? So what will happen is even if they decide to get rid of the book, they're still going to donate it somewhere else, right? So your book it never ends. It's
The book
always
is,
going, it's either, someplace where it can be used, or it's being donated to somewhere, it's going to be used someplace else. And you never just know what sort of eyeballs will see it. Like, I was really amazed when I first started writing books. I'd go on my Amazon back office and, somebody in Japan bought my book. I'm like, wow, like, somebody in Japan bought my book. Like, it just blows my mind how much, books travel, and how you never know who's going to read that book.
Yeah, and people share books. Like, I'm sometimes surprised when I hear from somebody who says, oh, I read your book. And I'm like, how did you buy it? I wasn't even selling it. Like, how did you get it? Like, I'm amazing. And they're like, yes, someone else gave it to me. They read it, they loved it, and they passed it on.
Mm-hmm.
And, what's amazing is that in my first SharePoint book, in all the editions, I left a ton of errors purposely.
Talk about that.
Sure, let's see what's up, right? Like, because what I did was I said, I'm just going to rush into it. I'm just going to get the sucker out, and then I'll improve it. I'll do some stuff, but I had to let go, Kim. I had to let go of the nonsense. And I spent 6 years agonizing about writing a book.
Mm-hmm.
Agonizing about what would I say, and would I be good enough, and is my English good enough, and is my grammar good enough, and do I have the right vocabulary, and would I get the right font size and the right line spacing? And I was just nonsense, agonizing for years and years and years. And at the end of the day, if I could make a suggestion for anyone considering writing a book, and by golly, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably giving it some consideration. I would recommend you set up what we define in the world of startups and business as an MVP. This is a minimal viable product. And if you want to learn more, you can read a book by a gentleman named Eric Ries, who wrote a book called The Lean Startup. There's also another one called The Startup Owner's Manual. There's a few other things from all the lessons learned from the tech days. But we can apply this to authorship as well and say that what is my minimum standard for the book? Mm-hmm. So you actually can define and say, look, what I want to do is share these stories.
Yes.
Right? It's your book. So you say, I'm going to share these stories. I want to teach these lessons. Mm-hmm. And then when you do that, it becomes very easy to then make your subpoints and start expanding your ideas. And then you have to draw the line to say, this is my writing deadline.
Yes.
This is my editing deadline. Yes. This is because otherwise you can edit yourself to death.
Oh, yeah.
And if you had an unlimited budget, you could pay your editor so that he or she would edit you until you died. Right? Because a book can always be improved because you improve, because you change on a regular basis. This is why it's so important to set a deadline, schedule a book launch, apply some pressure, and go. Because, when you're in the publishing world, like me and Kim are, you understand that behind the scenes, we can do things like improve versions of the book long before a new edition comes out, right?
Well,
no one knows and no one needs to know, but these are the little secrets. So it's like, just get the stuff done.
Yeah. Like, talking back to what you said, like one of the things I teach in my online course is before you even do your outline, you're going to talk about, what stories you're going to share, what value do you want to give? What problems are you going to solve? And we do all those worksheets before you ever even get to the outline of the book. But, you are so right. So there's a term, and if any of my clients are listening to this, they're just going to start to laugh because each one of them has heard this term. It is called analysis paralysis. And that's where you hit the point where you've analyzed that thing to death, you've beaten it up, you flipped it over, you did it again, and you're still not going anywhere. Yeah. So, it does hit a point. Your book will never be perfect. And what I also tell my clients is you do not know what perfect is. Not that there is perfect, but let's say you want high excellent, right? You don't know what that is until you get the book out to your audience and you get feedback. So I always tell my clients, it's better to get the book out, get feedback, and then, 6 months, a year later, do that second edition with the feedback that you've received, because then you're improving the book on what needs to be improved, not what you think needs to be improved. Right? Yes,
so, exactly.
And you're so right. You have to set yourself deadlines. And, one of the things that you do is get it out there on social media and make yourself accountable, right?
Yep.
Get people signing up to receive your book, because that puts the pressure on yourself to get it done. And, it doesn't matter whether, you're writing the book yourself or whether you're going through a ghostwriter, because, we do both here at RTI. We teach you how to write your book, but we also ghostwrite the books. And, every client hits that point where we've got to, push them, because it slows down. It's tempting just to let it slide. And it's like, no, hustle your butt here again. Let's get back on track.
It's the holidays, and then it's Valentine's Day, and then it's St. Patty's Day, and then it's some excuse or another, right? And
yep. Like what we're actually closing down for 2 weeks over Christmas, but what we're already doing is we're already booking those January appointments. So that first week back in January, it's like, okay, we're back to the grindstone. You've got a deadline for your book. We're getting it done, right?
Yeah.
So, it is very important. Set that, Mo, you're like so right. You have to set that deadline and just get it done. And then, 6 months, a year down the road, you revisit again. And if you need to do a second edition, that's the time, to look at it with fresh eyes, and you'll see what really needs to be changed and what's really working.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a game changer. It's such a game changer. I was helping out a couple of friends recently that are here in Miami. Mm-hmm. One's the CEO of it's like a co-working space / innovation center. And she and I were chatting about like how to take her career to the next level, right? She wants to do more speaking engagements and things like that. And I threw out the idea of her getting a book out there. And she's like, well, I thought I would have to be a lot older before I could do that. Yeah. And I'm like, you're already the CEO. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, what other position is it that you're looking to achieve so that you can then do it? So the barriers that are placed on you are really self-imposed.
Yes.
And, when it comes to getting a book out there, one thing to remember is that if you take your most important teachings, like the thing that really, really makes the biggest difference,
yes,
if you just taught that in a book, hallelujah, you've got a really amazing book.
Exactly.
And, people that worry about giving it all away, I want to now give you an answer for that, right? Because that's something else that comes up, is I don't want to give away all my trade secrets. I don't want to give away all my answers. And so I teach for a living. That's my primary thing. So this comes from the world of education and understanding. Mm-hmm. So there's something known as a gradient scale.
Okay.
Right? And a gradient scale, if you've seen it in scientific terms, at the very smallest levels, if you were to imagine like there's a vertical line and we're going to measure notches on the line, we would be looking at very tiny notches spaced very closely together. Mm-hmm. And then they would grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and they would get bigger and bigger and bigger as we go closer to the top. So what this looks like in the gradient scale is that everything in the universe happens on a gradient scale. You can like somebody just a little bit, or you can love the heck out of them that you're like ready to marry this person and like you share the rest of life. That's a huge step in gradient scales. The same thing is true in understanding. Take the topic of like just mathematics. Yes. At the very lowest level, you would understand that numbers exist, right? Whole numbers, negative numbers. You'd eventually get into understand what's a decimal, fractions. Then you learn how to do operators with your numbers, right? To add them, subtract them, multiply them, etc. So these are all tiny steps in a gradient scale. Eventually, you step up into multivariable calculus. Right? So in one lesson, you're learning something that's really esoteric and complex. It's this huge step up, and that's possible because you took all these tiny steps before.
Yes.
So when you are writing your book, and especially if you're also an educator or you're also a consultant or you provide some other intelligence-based service based on what you know, right, on your intellectual property, what you ought to do, what I suggest you do, and I think this is what Kim and I agree on, is give away your best stuff in the book at a very low gradient.
Yes.
You have to give it away at a low gradient because your book is going out to a broad audience.
Yes.
Right? So you have to do that. And people would be bored if all they got is the lesson. They don't want an instruction manual. They want a book. They want your personal story.
Yes.
They want examples of other things. They want to be led through a journey.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have that much space to deep dive into whatever is your specialty, right? So teach your best stuff, teach it on a low gradient, listen to your editors, listen to your folks, right? Get that thing done, implement all that other stuff, and you'll have a wondrous, amazing book. And you'll be more excited writing about it, and more people will be excited reading it because you're actually teaching amazing things instead of holding back, because people can tell when you're holding back.
Yes.
Instead, take it on to explain more, define more, make it more clear, explain the problem that you're solving in the world, deep dive into those things, and you'll have an amazing, amazing book.
Awesome. Well, Mo, how can people connect with you?
Okay, great question. So I am available on Instagram as the Mo Hasan. That's TheMoHasan. That's HASAN. And if you would like to watch either of my TEDx talks, just get on YouTube and look up Mo Hasan TEDx, just MOHASN and then TEDx, and you'll see my 2 videos up there. So please check those out and comment and like them. I'm also on Facebook. My company page is Intupower.com. But honestly, if you connect with me either on Facebook or LinkedIn, in any of those is fine. And on LinkedIn, you just search for my name and I should come up somewhere in there.
That is awesome. Well, what an amazing time that we've had. Thank you so much for coming on, Mo, and just really sharing with us, because I know, the people who are going to listen to this podcast are just going to be blown away. So thank you so much for being on the show. And to all our listeners, we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.